Good morning, friends. This is Father Tim. We begin our morning this morning by taking some time to continue our reading of First Samuel. So let's start as we always do. We take a look at the big picture. And yes, as always, let me remind you, the big picture reminds us that indeed First and Second Samuel were originally one book of sacred scripture. They have been divided, and so we read them obviously as separate books. We're reading through First Samuel. So let's zoom in on this. We are in chapter 11, which, so we know we're in this main large section, chapters 8 through 31, but notice there's not really any specificity. On chapter 11, we've got a section in there on chapters 8 through 10. We've got something there about chapters 13 and 15. We'll go over here 16, 17, 18 through 20, 21 through 26, 31. Well, what about 27, 28, 29, 30? What about 11 and 14 for that matter? Interesting, isn't it? Well, one thing we do know is that we are definitely in this side. So we are on the increase of Saul. We're on the decrease of Samuel. Note that this doesn't point that out, which is interesting. It shows Saul's footprint here as an arc. There is a rise and there is a fall. Shows David from First Samuel into Second Samuel with a rise and then a fall. But the actual figure of Samuel, whose name is over this whole story, which is much larger than him, there's no acknowledgement that from the time in chapter 8 where the people demanded a king, Samuel's beginning to arc down towards his own demise, his own death, which happens before Saul's. So let's pull up the reading windows and let's pull up the timer. There it is. I shall be reading from the left-hand column, which is a Jewish Bible, specifically the complete Jewish Bible. In the right-hand column, you see the text as found in a Christian Bible, specifically the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. Thank you for posting greetings and comments. And anyone who has not done so yet, I encourage to do that. And I also encourage you to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel if you've not done that already. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Mom. Let's see here. I think chapter 11, verse 11? Yes, chapter 11, verse 11 is where we are starting up this morning. So, the people of Jabesh Gilead have found that Saul and the rest of the people of Israel will indeed come to their help. They will be their rescuers. And so, where we left off last time is that the people of Jabesh Gilead, now that they know they have help, have announced to their enemy Nahash or Nakash in Jewish biblical language that they will surrender themselves. The surrender is a trap. They will surrender themselves, and they shall be delivered by their people. So, friends, let's read. And from time to time, I will point out some of the distinct things in Jewish biblical language that we need to familiarize ourselves with. Some basic core things like King Saul is Shaul. It's right there. That's Saul. Shmuel. Why, that's the prophet Samuel. Emily, in this case, there, Amoni, that is the Ammonites. And of course, remember Adonai. You look over here in the right-hand column. Capitals Lord, with, of course, capital L being a little bit larger. This is the sacred name of God. Transliterated best into English as YHWH. The name of God, the sacred name of God, so sacred, so as to, in Jewish tradition, only be spoken by God. And so, when the text has the sacred name, Jewish biblical tradition has a practice of just reading out loud Adonai. Adonai, which is a generic reference to God, like Well, like God in English. God is not God's name. I think sometimes we forget that as English speaking Christians. Note, by the way, there's a name that I have not ever mentioned, but I will today. A name that I have not once mentioned when we've been looking at the sacred name of God and the replacement for it, because only God utters God's name. Jehovah. If you were to look at traditional standard Hebrew text, the older the text that you look at, like if you were in a synagogue and got a chance to look at one of the Torah scrolls in a synagogue, there are absolutely no vowels. None. Just consonants. The vowels, or rather vowel points, got added later. They're little markings below the letters. That's why they're called vowel points. They're not actually even letters. They're just markings. At some point, some biblical scholars with just enough knowledge to not be accurate noted that the vowel points, there were vowel points under the sacred name, but missed that they were vowel points for Adonai, not the sacred name. Vowel points for Adonai to remind one, oh, we read Adonai, not the sacred name. And so they took the vowels from Adonai and the consonants from the sacred name. Keep in mind this was in German, not in English. In German, the J has a different sound than we're used to. The J sounds more like the Hebrew equivalent of the Y. And voila, what we get? Jehovah. The consonants from one word, the sacred name, the vowels from what is to be read instead of it. Interesting. All right, enough on that. Let's read. I didn't really mean to go that long. But, me and my rabbit holes. Full dive. Good morning, Audrey. Chapter 11, verse 11. Let's read. The next day, Shaul divided the people into 3 companies. They entered the camp of the Amoni during the morning watch and kept attacking until the heat of the day, until those who remained were so scattered that no two of them were left together. The people said to Shmuel, "Who are the men who said, 'Is Shaul to rule over us?' Hand them over to us, so we can put them to death." But Shaul said, "No one will be put to death today, because today Adonai has rescued Israel." Then Shmuel said to the people, "Come, let's go to Gilgal and inaugurate the kingship there." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there in Gilgal, before Adonai, they made Shaul king. They presented sacrifices as peace offerings before Adonai there, and there Shaul and all the people of Israel celebrated with great joy. Shmuel said to all Israel, "Here, I have done everything you asked me to do. I have made a king over you. There is the king walking ahead of you. But I am old and gray-headed. There are my sons with you, and I have walked at your head from when I was a boy until today. So here I am. Now is the time to witness against me before Adonai and before his anointed king. Does any of you think I have taken your ox or donkey, defrauded or oppressed you, or accepted a bribe to deprive you of justice? Tell me, and I will restore it to you." They answered, "You haven't defrauded or oppressed us, and you haven't accepted the start that over. They answered, "You haven't defrauded or oppressed us, and you have accepted nothing from anyone." He said, "Adonai is witness against you, and they replied, 'He is witness.'" Shmuel said to the people, "It was Adonai who appointed Moses, and Aaron, and brought your ancestors up from the land of Egypt. Now hold still, because I'm going to enter into judgment with you before Adonai regarding all the righteous acts of Adonai that he did for you and your ancestors." Not sure why this text over here is shown highlighted in green. Interesting. Okay. Now, back to where I was. We read verse 6. Verse 7. "Now hold still, because I'm going to enter into judgment with you before Adonai regarding all the righteous acts of Adonai that he did for you and your ancestors." We might have read that too. After Yaakov, Jacob, had entered Egypt, your ancestors cried to Adonai, and Adonai sent Moshe and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and had them live here in this place. But they forgot Adonai their God. So he handed them over to Sisera, or Sisera, commander of the army of Hazor, and to the Plishtim, the Philistines, and to the king of Moab, and they fought against them. But they cried to Adonai and said, We sinned by abandoning Adonai and serving the Baalim, the Baals, and the Ashtaroth, the Astartes, idols, false gods. But now, if you rescue us from the power of our enemies, we will serve you. So Adonai sent Jerubbaal, Bedan, Barak, Yiftach, Jephthah. Wait, no, Ursula. Yeah, okay. So Adonai sent Jerubbaal, Bedan, that's Barak, Yiftach, Jephthah, and Shmuel, which over here says Samson. Isn't that interesting? So Shmuel looks like it could be either Samson or Samuel. Interesting. I have not noticed that before. And rescued you from the power of our enemies on every side, and you live securely. When you saw that Nahash, the king of the people of Ammon, the Ammonites, was attacking you, you said, No, we want a king to rule over us, when Adonai, your God, was your king. Now here's the king you have chosen, the one you asked for. See, Adonai has put a king over you. If you will fear Adonai, serve him, obey what he says, and not rebel against Adonai's orders. If both you and the king ruling you remain followers of Adonai your God, then things will go well for you. But if you refuse to obey what Adonai says and rebel against Adonai's orders, then Adonai will oppress both you and your leaders. We're going to pause there, friends. But as we pause here, how do you think this is going to go? We are now into chapter 12. Chapter 12, verse 16. That's where we'll start up next time. Remember these words of Samuel. How's this going to work? How's this going to go over? If you refuse to obey what Adonai says and rebel against Adonai's orders, then Adonai will oppress both you and your leaders. Oh, look, right here in the middle of this column, chapters 13 and 15. Disobeys God's commands. Who? Saul. Saul disobeys. God's commands. And thus, proud Saul is brought low, and the demise begins. Keep that in mind. That's where we're going. And boy, it comes quick, doesn't it? Absolute power absolutely corrupts. Morning prayers in the next live in a few moments.